End of last year, actually it was on the last day of 2023, I published this video about my street photography year in review, where I talked about my most used gear, best purchase, worst purchase, and also my wish list for 2024, and also some of the key learnings that I've learned over the year. So today I thought it could be fun to make a video of the 6 months that have passed already in 2024. And if you've been following my channel, you know that I'm a management consultant. This is my hobby, this YouTube channel, and we have these year-end reviews and mid-year reviews. So I thought it could be fun to make a video half a year into 2024. All right, let's get into it. My most used gear so far in 2024 for street photography has been hands down this Fuji X100V, and this is hardly a surprise for people who follow my channel. I had a lot of mixed feelings about this camera when I bought it back in the summer of 2023, but it actually started to grow on me and it ended up becoming my true EDC, so everyday carry, and I literally bring it everywhere with me, even when I go out to do grocery shopping, because I don't want to miss out on a photo opportunity. And the reason why I really like it and why it became my true EDC is because it's so light and it's so compact, and I can just have it around my neck where I usually have my camera and just bring it, so it doesn't feel like that I'm bringing something extra with me. And also the photographs that I can make with this camera are so different than what I used to make with my Sony A7C. And I'm leaning more towards candid street photography, or what some people call classic street photography. And it's really interesting because I get to experiment a lot with this camera, and this camera is so much fun, and it also actually brought a lot of fun back for me when doing street photography. So the settings for this camera for street photography are that I use manual mode and zone focusing. So normally it's around 2 meters to infinity, and I hardly change that, but sometimes I like to experiment a little bit more. So if I don't want it to focus on infinity, I'll just put it like 10 meters or 12 meters. But infinity is normally okay because when I'm out there using smaller apertures, because most of the time it's just on f8. So it's really good to have a little bit more sharpness, just to show the environment a bit more in terms of doing candid street photography. So the ISO is a range set between 200 and often 1600, but that really depends on the day and the light conditions of the day. So normally I go out these days to do street photography around midday, where there's harsh light or hard light, and I don't need to go above 1600. I also have the exposure compensation set to 0.6, sometimes 0.3, depending on what kind of film simulation I'm using. And these days I'm really loving the Tri-X 400 film simulation, which is a black and white film recipe. Let's talk about how I set up my camera for street photography for the X100V. So as you can see, I tweaked my camera. So I've added a soft release shutter button. I've added also a thumb grip here. And I also added this camera strap, which is really nice because I can have it around my neck or I can have it around my wrist. And I also added a black mist filter, you can see here. So I also have it in a bigger version, so I have the 82 for my Sony A7C when I'm recording these videos, because it's really good for the skin. And also it diffuses the light, as you can see, so it's a little bit diffused. So that way I don't have to worry about if it suddenly starts to rain, so my camera will be protected. This is my setup every day when I go out to do street photography. So let's talk about my other camera, the Sony A7C Mark I, that has been my trusted camera for a long time. And to be honest, I use that camera less and less for street photography. But this year I actually have been out like 5-6 times with my camera and a choice of lens, which is typically the 55. And normally my setup is that I record these videos with my Sony A7C and I pair it with a 24mm, so I have a little bit more wider angle here. So this is a very tight space, so it looks bigger than it is. And also when I'm making B-rolls for this channel, I use primarily the 55 and 35. And I think 35 is really versatile, so I often have that. But the 55 gives that really nice compression effect that I really like if you're doing those close-up shots. So this is my setup for the YouTube channel, and I would also say that when I'm going out doing street photography, I have to mention that I still carry my AirPods. I have the noise cancelling ones, so it's the Generation 2. Best purchase of 2024, so for street photography and for this YouTube channel. And in 2023 it was actually divided into these two groups. So for the YouTube channel, so those small items that are necessary and essential in order for me to make these videos, and the other group was for street photography. And the best purchase was definitely the Fuji X100V. I made a few videos that you can watch, I'll link it down below. So let's head into 2024. So the best purchase so far, I can say that I did a quick tally and I've added a piece of gear each month on average, which is a lot so far, and we're only 6 months in. And most of the items I bought are evenly divided between the two groups that I mentioned before. So I would say the best purchase so far has been my wide conversion lens for my Fuji X100V. So the 28mm equivalent that I talked about earlier. I've been obsessed about the 28mm focal length, and it's such a fascinating thing for me because I don't like wide focal lengths, and the longer focal length has always been my safe space, and it's completely opposite now. I really like the wide focal lengths now. So that's been definitely the best purchase so far for my street photography. Alright, so let's talk about best runner-up purchases so far. And in one of my vlogs, actually it was the first episode, I'll also link it down below, I talked about that I started to read a lot of books going into 2024, something that I wanted for a long time but I could never find the time. And suddenly I started to read a book on average, and that average has gone down a little bit more, so I need to read more books. But I actually managed to complete my bookshelf with a lot of great books. So I bought 15 books so far. And I'm not talking about photo books, I'm just talking about regular old books. And one of the books that I talked about in the first episode of that vlog was this one. It's called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, and it's just a fantastic book. So Rick Rubin is an American record producer. He works with some of the biggest stars, music stars of the industry, and he helps them creatively to unblock that creative block that they might experience. And this book is his thoughts on what to do when you are suffering from that creative block. And I read a couple of chapters when I bought this book. It just hit me like a lightning bolt of inspiration, and I could not put this book down. So this is really highly recommended if you are into being inspired in a different way. And also for me as a photographer, it's really inspiring for me to see how other artists are, dealing with creative burnout or not wanting to do whatever they're meant to do. So for me, I had long cycles of where I didn't want to pick up my camera. I don't know if it was creative burnout, but I just felt I didn't have a lot of say with my photography back in 2023. So this book has been really, really great. I also want to mention two other books. So I have these two books. The first one is The One Thing, and this is a really great book. And the other one is Essentialism, and I actually did a whole vlog episode about this book specifically, so you can check it out as well. But the one thing I want to just focus on this one as well, and this has been really great in terms of getting stuff done. And this is more related to the content creator side of me, so being able to focus on that one thing that you need to do, because sometimes I do procrastinate. I would say, in my own opinion, I'm a master planner, but sometimes just motivation is not there and you feel like everything is just a chore. So when I read this book, this is a very practical book and I can recommend it as well. It's a great book. So for the YouTube setup, I added small items. So I bought a ball heads that I needed for one of my tripods, so I don't have to use the same one and going back and forward. It just saves a lot of time. And I also bought a pair of magic arms, and small things like that are really helpful in the daily life of being a content creator. I also want to mention a few other essentials that are not that sexy as my other purchases, but they are very essential purchases, and it's been a long time coming. I should have bought them earlier. The first one I want to talk about is this sensor cleaning kit. So this is very, very important that you keep your camera in tip-top shape. So basically, I only had my sensor cleaned once professionally since I bought it, and it's been, I think, around 3.5 years now. And she had to clean it twice because there was so much dirt in it. And at one point I could see the dust in my photographs, and I knew it was time to get it cleaned. So now I bought a home cleaning kit, which is, it's actually quite an easy process, and everybody with a camera and interchangeable lenses, that it's good to clean your sensor once in a while. And another thing I want to mention is this is a air blower. So this is really, really good for cameras as well. And this is actually a very essential piece of gear that I need for my content creation and for my videos, because when I take photos, and especially close-up photos of my camera and other stuff, it's really, really important that there's not a lot of dust. And apparently there's a lot of dust in my apartment, even though it's quite clean at times, but there's a lot of dust in the air. So this has been something that I've been looking to buy, and this little thing is quite expensive, and I wanted to buy a good quality air blower, and I'm really, really happy about this purchase as well. I also want to mention my most expensive purchase so far, and this is this thing here. So this is the Joe Greer strap for my camera, and I don't know why I bought it. It's really gorgeous. It's a really fine leather, but I already have a really nice leather strap for my Fuji X100V. But yeah, I really wanted it, and I bought it from the US, Kentucky specifically, and had it delivered to Copenhagen. And I can just say it has been twice as expensive of the retail price of this camera strap. So that's been my most expensive camera purchase so far. 2024 wish list. So going into 2024, I had a few items on my wish list that I really wanted to purchase in 2024. Let's see how many of those items remains here half a year after. So the number one item on my wish list is definitely the Leica M6, and it's been there since last year and the year before that, and probably the year before that again. And I went to the flagship store back in June 2023, and I was really fascinated about the M6 and the MA and the MP. And since then I thought about it a lot, whether I should buy the M6, because first of all, the Leica system, the whole ecosystem, it's very expensive. And the second thing was to really understand film photography and my need to have and create film photography. So it's been a very long process, and I've come to the decision that I still want to purchase the Leica M6, and I have an appointment already in the coming weeks where I go out and test drive it. So I'm super excited about it. But the main reason for me buying the Leica M6, or coming to the decision of buying the M6, is that I feel like it's the natural next step of my street photography journey. And I think I've been wanting to go that route for a long time, because I've been doing a little bit of film photography on the side. I don't talk about it a lot on the channel because it's just something I do for myself when I just have a little bit of time. And the camera I use is my dad's very old camera from the 60s. It's a fully mechanical camera. It's very heavy, and it's been a lot of fun because it's another way of doing photography and street photography when you have a film camera, because again, talking about the associated cost, you know, the rising cost of the films and the development. So it's a very thought through and very conscious decision that I'm making, buying a film camera and also buying something that is so extreme in terms of the expense. So there will be a lot of challenges for me as a street photographer, and if you know me by now, you know I like a good challenge, and also in a way I'll be coming back to my roots of the film days. Alright, so the number two item on my wish list was the 40mm focal length, and that has been on my wish list for a very long time as well. And I always wanted that focal length, but I could never manage to get my hands on it for various reasons. You know, sometimes it was budget, sometimes I felt like I didn't need more lenses and I had enough with my already 4 prime lenses that I own. And recently TT Artisan sent me their 27mm APS-C lens, and which is roughly a 40.5mm equivalent on a full frame camera. I did a whole review video on it, you can check it out. And I would say that that focal length is exactly how I imagined it would be, and it's just perfect because it sits smack in the middle of the 35mm and the 50, and I love the 50 as well, but sometimes it's just too tight as a walkabout lens when I'm doing street photography. 35, in my opinion, it's a little bit boring. It's good, it's versatile, it's beginner friendly and all those things, and I learned all my street photography using a 35mm back in the day. But there's just something boring about it, in my opinion, and the 40mm is just right in the middle. And for me and the type of street photography I want to do from time to time, it's just perfect. And yeah, you can hear more about my thoughts in that video. So that actually is crossed off my wish list for now. So the two remaining items on my wish list coming into 2024 were the Mu 1 or Mu 2, which is basically a cheap point and shoot camera from the 90s. I did some research and I really fell in love with the Mu series. So right now it's not relevant, especially when I'm buying my Leica M6. So I don't need 2 film cameras, especially when I'm buying something so extremely expensive as the M6. And the other item was the 105mm focal length, and I wanted that for a long time as well. And considering my needs and what I really prioritize right now, which are the wider focal lengths, so I don't need the 105. Maybe with time and when I have an actual need for that 105, I don't know what I would use it for right now. I think it's a great focal length for me because I like longer focal lengths. So for now, I think both of them will be crossed out from my wish list. What should I do more of 2024? So I mentioned a few things in that video back in 2023 that I wanted to do more of. So I wanted to do more photo walks, I wanted to do more film and travel photography, and also I wanted to pivot my channel into more vlog style videos, and let's see how things progress so far. So I wanted to do more photo walks. That was my number one wish, that I could find some more time to do photo walks. And to my surprise and to my delight is that I started to do daily photo walks. And somehow I managed to carve out a specific time for me to go out and do street photography. And sometimes it's just 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I just have that pull of going out on the streets. So far it's been the best decision that I made to prioritize going on photo walks every day. And to be honest, it was a little bit hard in the beginning because I had to kind of figure out my schedule. I had to figure out this YouTube channel. I had to figure out my full-time job, and but yeah, it gives me value, and I talk about it in some of my vlog videos. And also this year I want to focus much more on what gives me value, but more about that later in the video. And the next two things were film photography and travel photography. And film photography we already talked about. This is something that I actively decided on, that I want to venture into film photography now. For travel photography, unfortunately, I haven't been able to travel much, and I tried a few times last year. My flight got cancelled. I got stuck in Copenhagen airport. But this year I will see how my schedule is, and if I can manage to escape for a week, I will do that. But traveling is definitely a priority, but sometimes life comes in the way. But let's see how the year progresses, and I can take a status end of the year. And the last item was that I wanted to pivot my channel into more vlog styled content. So I can say that I also can cross that off my list. I did that. I started back in February to create an extra video a week. So instead of having one weekly video, I had two, and I did that for continuously 3 months, which was really hard work. But the good thing about it was that I really started to figure out my identity for this channel, my street photography channel, because I do really different kind of content. I actually started out doing POV videos, and that kind of got boring because there's so many videos out there. So I do them less and less, but they're still there. I also do techniques and tips and tricks. So basically 5 tips to, be better at something. And I also do gear reviews, but the gear reviews I do is only the gear that I own, because it has to make sense in terms of what I need as a street photographer. I don't have a lot of budget like most of my audience. We are all hobby street photographers, and I cannot go out and buy the most expensive item aside from the Leica. I have to be mindful of, what I really need in my street kit. So those videos are still going to remain and still come as I can add more gear to my street kit. But the vlog style was a little bit a bet from my side, because something I've been thinking about for a long time, and sometimes the topics are also a little bit fringe. So for me, that has been a really interesting pivot, because that is my true identity as a street photographer, and the response has been really good from the audience as well. And some of my best performing videos have been those vlog videos. So that says a lot in terms of the time and effort that I put in, because it gave me a lot of kind of baseline in how and where my channel should go from here. So that's super exciting. I also want to mention a few things that I didn't have on my wish list or to-do list going into 2024, but I started to prioritize my newsletter and my blog. So you can find both of them on my website. So you can sign up for the blog, which is called Filter Frame, and so is the newsletter. And this is something that I do for myself, and it also gives me the value that I was talking about. So I really want to spend more time, writing my blogs, and also, writing my newsletters, because they are a part of me and my identity as a street photographer. And I really want to share that, because YouTube videos can be a little bit polished, and it's very, one-dimensional. You see me in a certain way and a certain topic. And in my newsletter and my blog, I can talk more freely and talk about those topics that are even more fringe, that I don't necessarily would put in a vlog episode or a normal episode on this channel. So that's really cool that I started to do that as well. So the things that I left firmly in 2023 was my desire to use less social media, so less consumption of the social media outlets. I'm really on track of not using my social media. I reduced my social media consumption a lot. And I only post once in a while. Sometimes I do a Instagram story or maybe a photo or something. I think the last time I posted as a recording of this video was 3 months ago. for me personally, it has been just very time consuming, and I also really felt like I didn't get any value out of scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Instead, I filled my time by reading good books and watching amazing documentaries on street photography or what have you. So I really like all the time that frees up in something that I'm really, really proud of. So in one of the last segments of that other video that I did end of last year, I talked about my favorite photos, and I did a quick tally because I took almost 6,000 photos last year in the entire year, and I did a quick tally this year as well. So for the first 6 months, I've taken almost 5,000 shots, and it's been mostly with my Fuji X100V, but I also used my Sony A7C. So that's a lot of photos, and I do have a favorite way of shooting, the kind of photos that I'm drawn to, and you can probably guess it. So it's candid street photography or classic street photography, whatever you want to call it. But I have a very close second, which is silhouette photography, and now we are in the summer season and I cannot wait to get out there and do more silhouette photography. So those are my two favorite techniques of doing street photography as of right now. I talked about, things that brings me value, and I would say that I've been successful so far with bringing, doing things that really brings me value. So whether I'm writing a newsletter or I'm writing my blog or I'm doing these vlog episodes, it gives me a lot of value. And in addition, I also start going out with my Fuji X100V on a daily basis. Sometimes not daily, it will be as much as possible, and I managed to create that habit. So I actually have a desire to go out every day. I miss it if I don't go out. And I've done all these small things that really, really has sparked my creativity, my inspiration for the type of photos that I want to do in the future, and just feeling good about street photography. So sometimes it's very, very good to understand what drives you, what provides you value, and just run with it. Just do it. Don't overthink. And I'm an overthinker, and sometimes that just stops me from doing anything. So yeah, that's been far the best 6 months in my street photography year. Let's see how the next 6 months will be. All right, take care. See you in the next one.